Yeah, I've had other discussions when we're kind of outside the box with God, like, yeah, I don't know, God.
Yeah.
That's not our normal.
We kind of have a formula
not our
that
normal
works.
thing.
Yeah.
I know. This was more like, this. Okay.
I have no idea how they're going to respond.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson hanging out with my cohort. I like that word.
Yeah.
S.J. Jennings. And we are in part 2 of a series on kindness and strength. And I'm really looking forward to especially this episode because we get to talk about, the boy, the mole, the fox and the horse, this little animated short film that God partnered with to just really massage my heart in some ways about kindness. And so, but before that, I want to just take a pause and invite all of our friends and allies to the Heart of a Warrior Encounter in October 5th through 8th at Sharp Top Camp, Young Life Camp. And here's a quick story from our friend Shane to maybe encourage you to come see what God may have for you.
It was up at one of the old Top Gun events in the mountains up in Virginia. And I remember just really feeling like I was in the presence of so many men that had such a connection with God. That what's wrong with me? Why doesn't God ever talk to me? Like all these guys are talking about this great experience. All that was in my head was, God, I need to hear you. I need to hear your voice. I just need a light or something from you. And I look down in the stream, there's literally a yellow flashlight sitting in the bottom of the stream. I'm not making this up. And I sort of made this condition with myself, if I pick up that flashlight and it works, this is real. Dude, I swear, I picked up that flashlight, flipped it, it was a pelican light covered in moss. It shone a light as clear as could be. And I kind of heard, felt, experienced, I hear you, I see you, and I've got something for you. It was just amazing.
Join us at the Heart of a Warrior Encounter October 5th through 8th at Sharp Top Cove in Jasper, Georgia. To find out more, head to www.zoweh.org/events.
Welcome back.
Doesn't matter how many times I hear it, man.
No, I love his quiver.
Yeah, he's so tender when he's telling that story.
He's a big guy, man. He's a linebacker still.
Yeah, or a rugby player or something.
Oh, yeah. See that coming at you downfield or upfield, I guess. And
that's a guy that's favored by momentum on the playing field. That's for sure.
Man, he's one of my favorite buddies.
He's a great dude.
And that story that happened a few years ago, he's never been the same. I mean, I've watched the trajectory, as we explore the kingdom and as we kind of, as C.S. Lewis said, chase after God, we get caught again and again. We find things, I think it was a Bilbo Baggins thing, that it's amazing what you find when, when you leave your front door. Yeah. Often not what you thought.
I cannot think, Greg. I can think of Greg right now. He'd be correcting you.
Yeah. I just killed Tolkien.
Yeah, he just shredded that quote, but I understood what you were referring to.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I remember Sherry pointing out this author, Charlie Mackesy. And he wrote a little book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it was showed up in social media. It was showing up as just excerpts from the book and little encouragements here and there. And then, I guess it's 8 or 9 months ago now,
Yeah.
You came in all excited because an animated version of that had come out, right?
Yeah, November last year, I think, was the release on Apple TV. And I had heard about the book.
Right.
Didn't know a ton about it. And yeah, where my heart was in my masculine journey was at that time was this kindness.
Yeah.
And particularly SJ kind of being kinder to myself, being, I think we all have a true self, false self. Some call it the shadow self. Some call it the poser, the masks that we hide behind, you know, whatever this other ego thing is.
And you were finishing up King Me at the time. There's a lot of kindness in there.
Yeah. And that's right. And so that's when the ambush kind of, started. And I think, it wasn't long after it was released that I found it. So somewhere right around Christmas. And, the story about Charlie, you know how when you discover something, I just had a conversation with a guy about one of my tattoos about the hawk. And, he was like, do you know what that means in the old Celtic kind of Christian historical? And like, no. And it's the one who sees. It's about God as. And I was like, okay, I got to research this some more. So you sometimes you're going to be in research mode. You're going to learn things and discover things, whatever it might be. So here I was, kind of moving through what I felt like was a semester or turned into a year. Like your word of vulnerability now is turned into a degree.
Yeah.
You're in the degree program.
It's taken me a decade.
Yeah. So this was just one of those things that I think the teacher, the spirit kind of brought in. And I started looking at Charlie Mackesy's life and he's a faith kingdom man. He was writing, he was doing his illustrations, if I understand it, in his story. And he's so kind. He looks like Art Garfunkel, if you haven't seen him, you know, kind of that. Yeah, but with Willy Wonka hair, Gene Wilder, hair. So, but he's so kind, and he just has this outlook that is, that is attractive about the way he talks, the way he is. Even the shows that I would see him on, this morning show or that morning show.
Yeah, because the feature won an Oscar.
Well,
right?
it did. That happened a little bit later the next year.
Right.
And so,
but that elevates your exposure, if you will.
But he would take. So he was known around London because he would take his drawings, cartoons. Sounds like to me were kind of demeaning it, but these drawings, and he would put them in the train stations. They have upper and lower train systems throughout London, and so he would just put them there with encouragements for people. That so he became somewhat known in amongst that, and the book for sure, because the book I think was easily out a couple more years. Maybe 2020, which maybe before that, maybe it was 18. Anyway. That said, it kind of caught up with me and was exploring in my own inner work in counsel with my own heart, with the help of a friend, and so came upon this this animated short. So I think are we going to show the trailer?
Yeah, let's watch the trailer, man. Yeah, let's watch it. So it'll pop up on their screen, but you and I can sit here and watch it too.
What do you dream about?
Home.
What's that like?
I don't know, but I know I need one.
So, what are we doing?
We're on a quest for cake.
Well, let's get going then.
You are loved, and you bring to this world things that no one else can.
Whoa! What's the bravest thing you've ever said?
Help. Asking for help isn't giving up. It's refusing to give up.
Oh, Christmas. That's right. It came out at Christmas time, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's just wonderful to see it again and to, be reminded. I mean, there's so much more. It's a trailer. But the idea of finding where you belong together. And I think, being in all of our stories, it's unfortunately, and we just finished the series on community.
Yeah.
So community, can be so bruising and family and families of origin and all those things. But if that's where we're supposed to be loved, then I think that explains that's where we're most often hurt. And yeah, there's stories that strangers kind of come in and invade.
I think in this, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think in this you see that in the fox, in his character. He's so mistrusting, and I'm sure he has reason to be.
Right. So when I see the, some of those lines and even the music, I play the music often now, from the soundtrack. It's just pleasant. and it's an encouragement. It is kind. It's something I can do for myself that's kind, and it reminds me that whatever's going on in this story, in the end, love wins. Yeah. And the beauty of kindness and the way they talk to each other is kind. Even though they're confronting, some different ideas and beliefs that each of them
some
have,
things out,
and they're all doing that together. Early on and I think we'll probably play this clip. I think Caleb's got it queued up, but about kindness and what's another one that came up. What's the bravest thing you've ever said? Help. Help isn't giving up. Help's refusing to give up.
Oh man.
Just I just don't know. I've shared this with so many people, and it's just I think standard exploration for what does this invite you to feel, invite you to see, and seeing it. I watched it back to Christmas and that time, SJ. I watched it once and just, started leaking, and that's a good thing. And I watched it by myself. I'm just even still kind of surprised that I got curious that way and watched it by myself, and then was like, Robin, you got to see this. And she didn't know about the film. She knew about, I think, the book, and we had the book. And so
you've had a I would say a healthy suspicion about animated in general over the years. Like, is this just kids' entertainment? Like, what am I looking at here? Yeah. Because I know the way you think, man. When you see something like that or that trailer, you're going into it going, how can I share this? Yeah. How does this fit into the platform and platforms that we've been given?
It's a great point. And you're right. You know me. But this stayed kind of in that category and space of, before I got there, which I would go to pretty quickly, how can this help others? How can I distribute this?
Right.
And especially with what we've been entrusted. This was more, I was the boy. I was the mole. I was the fox and I was the horse, and I watched them. I watched it some more to see and feel and walk with Jesus into why this feels so heavy is not the word, why it feels so saturating. What is it watering? What is it inviting me to feel and see. And that was where I was that's where I got ambushed, as I said earlier, surprised. Yeah. So then Robin watched, and interestingly, it must have come after Christmas, even though it was released about that time. Yeah, it had to have, because otherwise we would have all watched it. So I think it must have happened where my watching it was not November and December when it came out, but January.
Yeah.
Because then my children were in at different times, and I watched it with them, and I would watch and look at them watching to see because I was getting very familiar with the script, with the story, and just to watch their bodies and faces, react. And I have not really done that much before. I can do that with an audience some. If I'm sharing, I can kind of
you're facing the audience.
You hear that, read the room.
Yeah.
But that's when they're looking at me, when they're watching something else, and you're kind of, seeing what SJ's seeing and how and to see a smile that they can't help but make, or to see their eyes get big, or them have to, rub. It's just it sounds a little creepy kind of, but it was research, bro. I really just watching how is this affecting them and because is it just me or is this, and I just kept getting more and more and more affirmation until one day we're getting ready for the April event, and you were talking about animation, and we there's enough film and parables in films and stories to kind of stay with live, stories. And sometimes we find a documentary that just hits a kingdom thing, or hey, Lord of the Rings and The Matrix. I mean, plenty of other fantasy and science fiction are going to grab their weight and their the truth and wrap it in some of that stuff. So I've been able to kind of steer clear of Disney, though they've built an empire on biblical parables in any way, regardless of what your opinion of Disney is today. Those epic stories still they're borrowing from the great story that God is authoring and telling. And so, but this time, as you said, there was an encounter with God that, I heard, I want you to show this to all the men.
Yeah. Was it Advance first? Did we do it at Advance? I think I remembered you saying you're advanced men, so I want you to stay with me in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we showed it at the encounter in the spring too.
Yeah.
Because it was so impactful.
Yeah. But that was the late January was kind of the
because it was just a couple weeks before that you were watching it with your daughters. And all
somebody
of that
made that I felt like men, on their journey. What we have 175 or 200 men at the Advance or something like that.
200. Yeah.
And that this was something like, so if you remember what happened, and then I think it'd be good to show this.
I want to see
next
this clip.
So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, so I'll save some of this for after. But we, it was. I didn't share a whole lot even with the team, but other than kind of, I need you to trust me. This is something I believe God wants us to do. These are advanced guys, so they've been to a few weekends, they've read some books, they're with us and here for more. I think there's some more in this short film. And I've had other discussions when we're kind of outside the box with God, like, I don't know, God. That's not our normal.
We kind of have a formula that works.
Thing. Yeah. I know. This was more like, okay.
I have no idea how they're going to respond,
and I was okay with that, and so, because it's, you're talking about a children's book that's so beautifully done in its animation that, and there's depth and just Charlie's way of his artistry. I felt like this is not Looney Tunes or Hanna-Barbera, from where we grew up. This was
there's that kind of animation and there's that kind of story.
Yeah.
And then there's the kind that kind of it can be on both sides of the bridge, if you will.
Yeah.
So a child could watch this.
Yeah.
And be entertained by it. And a grown man can watch this and remember the child that was entertained by this. And
I knew that's what God was after, because the masculine journey,
bringing you back to the boy,
lived forward, but has to be looked back at what is incomplete in me, what has been stolen or abused or hurt or just not validated, not trained, not knowing.
Yeah. How often have you had somebody say to you or heard somebody say, man, if I could go back to myself at X age, and what I would tell that guy and all of that. That's more what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But we're talking about going back and talking to him from the perspective of the heart of a man who's trying to speak to that younger boy from an oriented position, from a place where he knows who he is, where he is, the good God's up to in his life. He's working on identifying his false self and all that. And so going back and just saying, buy Google stock in 1995, that's kind of thing is not really helpful, right? But if I could go back to my younger boy and say, it's going to be okay.
That shouldn't have happened.
You're still worthy. You're still seen. You're loved.
That wasn't your fault.
Some of the lines in here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's some little brilliant scenes of mistakes and failures and so the whole overlay of this, really, this story. If you haven't seen it, hopefully you'll see it. But as he's trying to get home, he thinks he believes he's lost. Feels lost, and believes that if I could just find a home, and it's what his idea of home.
Yeah, the mole in the trailer says, "What's that like?"
Yeah, and he just anyway.
So I actually had never really heard that before, and so I heard him say it just as we were watching.
Yeah,
what's that like? And then I started thinking, well, all four of them are on a journey trying to find. They don't say I'm trying to go home. But they're all four of them on a journey looking for what home could look like. It
surprises them. Yeah. So
this clip.
This is early.
Yeah.
This is early on. The mole finds the boy finds the mole, kind of a hello, in the snow. And so they're getting acquainted. And in the home piece, what are you doing out here? The mole says, well, I'm lost, and wanting to get home. And so the mole decides valiantly that, well, I'll help you. I know an old mole that said this, and you should do that. So they're trying to find the river. That's why they're up in a tree. They get to a high spot. They climb this hill, and they get to a high spot where they both kind of perch. And now they're just having this beautiful kind of conversation about, and I think we've discovered this too, about asking questions.
Yeah.
And, these are like, what's the bravest thing you've ever said, that we saw earlier in the clip. That comes later. But this is just them getting acquainted and building trust. And, so we can hit this.
All right.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Kind.
Nothing beats kindness. It sits quietly beyond all things. So much beauty we need to look after.
Yes. So much.
I love that.
It's funny that Caleb cut it right there.
Yeah.
Bonk.
Poof, into the snow
Yeah.
below. Yeah. Yeah, man.
And they both, it's so funny even then, they're both, I'm so sorry. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was
Yeah.
my fault. I should, he says, I was getting a bit warm. So, but, and I didn't, back to noticing, SJ, like you said, like after they say that, and then he kind of puts his hands back on the limb, and just surveys it. It came out of him, and he was good with what he said. He was good with the idea. What do you want to? And do you see anything? No, not really. And then here's this big question.
Yeah, and I love the mole's response. As if to say, I have a few thoughts about kindness, and then he shares them. The other thing I noticed that made me think about being a little boy, I just wonder, it's left to the imagination. Why is this boy out lost in the woods in the snow? I always wonder throughout the whole thing, like, how is he not shivering? But they just don't even enter into that. But I wonder in that scene, what is his motivation for wanting to be kind? Has he been treated with unkindness? Right. Oftentimes little kids can do that. Like, I'm just not going to be angry like my dad was. Those vows. And I just wonder more about his story.
Yeah, and a very, very, to your point, unconventional answer in the regard, like it's not baseball, it's not a singer, it's not a president.
Right.
It's
even a firefighter or a cowboy, right?
Yeah, it's not that. It's I think it's deeper than that. It's what any of those personas would be like if they were kind.
Yeah, it's not what do you want to be when you grow up?
How do you
or not what you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
It's what you want to be.
How do you want to be?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And how do you want to be? And so, I already know. You can imagine. This is early in the film. I'm already aware, after writing King Me, and in this chapter 9 about a good king and kindness, and I've seen what pursuing kindness has done, and what it's been like for our marriage and for my fatherhood. And it's been invaluable in relating. And I think it's been one of the kindest, most loving things I have ever discovered is listening. And our whole team has kind of been in an exploration of with Robin in the listening guide.
Yeah.
And tending to someone, and how powerful that is to listen, how kind and loving it is to listen.
Yeah.
So those are just words that are fascinating to put together. Kind, loving, how strong, how impactful, how good it is to be a kind listener, and what that looks like and how to describe that. So, which we have a podcast on, and
Sure.
And you can dive into that. But I think for me, in the place I was at in these last 6, 8, 10 months, was God was preparing to bring some freedom to some things that had long been lodged in me through my story, and most of it in and through critical kind of spaces, accusational, critical. I mean, your mom, I'm such a this, I'm such a that, but kind of taking on unkindness, like you said, and criticism, accusation, guilt, shame, all of that stuff. There's been some real remedy in me at this king stage in my late 50s, I have to say late 50s now, looking back at boyhood and explorer stages with a kinder eye rather than, trying to, can't we just get past some of the effects of those wounding moments in those years? But to walk with Jesus back there, to stand with Jesus back there kindly.
Yeah.
And consider what is it, even a kind thing to say to Mike, who I was known as a boy. It has brought a very different translation and a very different expression to those parts of me that needed tending to, yes, by Jesus, but with my engagement.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Just like, he can't do this by himself.
Yeah.
And so here come these characters. Yeah. And in this, the way you're talking about it, we have the opportunity to go back for this little guy.
So every one of these little scenes, just keeps compounding on my heart in a soft and kind way. When they are starting to, relate to each other. So I'd love to, the fox shows up. They decide to wait to the next morning.
Right.
Because they find the river and they decide to wait to the next morning. And while they're waiting, the fox basically, tracks them in their backtracks back up to the limb. And, I think the boy says, gosh, he looks hungry, and snarling. He's a fox. And so he gets distracted. He goes, down. The fox leaves them, kind of disappears. And then they hear the sound of literally it's the fox in a snare.
Yeah, it's a yelping sound.
Trapper hunting, thing has trapped him, put some bait out there. And so the fox is now entangled. And this is the boy and the mole kind of running to the sound. Do you think someone's hurt?
Trying to be kind, not knowing it's the fox.
And so they discover it's the fox, and this is what happens.
He's very much a threat to them before this scene, so it's interesting.
Oh, dear.
Please, be careful.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I am not afraid.
If I wasn't caught in this snare, I'd kill you.
If you stay in that snare, you'll die.
You did so well.
One of our greatest freedoms is how we react to things.
Yeah, man. I love that one.
How come?
Because I've been in both places. Definitely have been, if whatever it is that's holding me back wasn't holding me back, I'd kill you, and in such an unhealthy place.
Ensnared, yeah.
Ensnared and wounded and, mistrusting. I'm threatened by everything, so I'm going to be a threat. This is where the fox lives his life, right? And then here comes this little, barely a morsel for the fox, right? Who is just so brave and so kind. Like in the face of
personal harm.
How many of us have sat across from somebody who has had that kind of air about them, like the fox does, and we're able to summon this courage to just be kind?
Mm-hmm.
You don't seem to understand. I'm not your greatest problem. The snare you're in is your greatest issue right now. And I have the power, as a matter of fact, to release you from it. And I just love what the mole says. We have one of our greatest freedoms is how we react to things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've thought in what we get to do, it would be, my only asterisk to that it is good. It would be good to come to a place where you actually have some freedom in which way you react. I think some of us from our stories get so programmed, like the fox.
Oh yeah, I think that's what we're offering.
Right, but like the fox,
but most of us are more like the fox.
He's not really free to react differently until that moment invades his story, and he's now having to consider, which you can tell by the title, the fox is coming back around. He's gonna journey with these two, and
somewhat reluctantly at first,
and a little distant, a little bit distant, but trust and movement, and so he's one of the characters for sure that, other than the boy, I feel like the mole and the horse are offering a little bit from a more settled place, but the fox drops some of the greatest wisdom in the whole short.
And their relationship is transactional at the beginning. So the mole sets him free, and spoiler alert, then the fox gets to rescue the mole, right, and kind of pay him back.
Yeah,
and then leaves.
And then they're kind of on their way, So, I believe that the more we can be in tune with what moves our heart, the more we have an opportunity to bring to the Father the questions, the curious, what is that? What is that? What chord is that striking, or what place is that touching, or why the tears? I think we move on from, which I would call it this. I think we move on from the sacred way too fast because we don't recognize that it's the sacred, and that somehow God is doing his wooing us to see something either in us that's not good, or in us that's really good, or wants to give us something that's good, or take something that we've lived under. So there seems to be a replacement program in the kingdom, and while I wasn't aware of maybe all of some of that unkindness that I was carrying, and in many ways taught how to be unkind to my younger self, then here comes kindness. Not just, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be kind. And I think there's a strength and a power in that I look for in the next session. I feel like we get to really substantiate this fruit of the Spirit, as we've said, this virtue, this quality that literally is of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and therefore is one of the best ways we can, as image bearers, move and relate and connect. So, So next podcast, let's jump on that.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right,
sounds good. Give us a like and subscribe wherever you watch or engage in podcasts. YouTube here, man, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and we're right incrementally getting there, man. We are so close. So share this message whenever you can.
Yeah. And remember, October 5th through 8th, we've got the Heart of a Warrior Encounter at Sharp Top Cove, partnering with our camp friends at Young Life and really believe it's going to be a significant marker. 15 years of men's and women's events for Zoweh that we're going to get to celebrate that weekend. So it's going to be
Caleb
good.
said it's the coolest Young Life camp. So, I mean,
he would know.
He would.
He is Mr. Young Life.
It's true.
Yeah. So, all right. So until next time, get out there, explore the kingdom, because in the kingdom of God, there is always more to explore. We'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.